Hi guys, welcome back to the Unposted podcast. Today we have a very special guest, Jenna Gestetner. Very nice to have you on. Jenna is a student at USC. She is a senior, so graduating soon, and she is all about health and wellness, and we're going to learn about that today, her journey, and she also is going to be starting a little healthcare app, which she'll talk more about. But I'm very excited. Thank you, Jenna, for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited.
Yes, definitely. It's crazy. We're right down the street from each other. So this is perfect. Just pop on over, have a little talk about mental health and wellness. But yeah, I wanted to start with you from just the beginning, just so people kind of hear your story a little bit. And for those of you guys that are new here or that don't know Jenna, what's crazy is I found you on TikTok like probably half a year ago, and I have been watching your content like ever since, and we actually connected on Threads. Everybody, if you're not on Threads, what are you doing? It's a great way to build a community. But your videos were like, I have over 100 allergies and you can only eat like 14 or something different ingredients or foods, which I was like, oh my goodness. And of course I think to myself, I'm like, this girl's got to be like a super warrior, because to only make food like full meals with like it was 14, right?
Yeah, it's 14
14 ingredients is crazy. My little brother, he actually grew up with like a ton of allergies. He's like allergic to milk, eggs, wheat, soy, dairy. I mean, everything really under the sun, and was on like a special formula till he was like 6 years old. So he also has like eczema. He was like in and out of like the hospital, you know, with like anaphylactic shock situations, like to peanuts and a bunch of things. So even having dabbled in that, I was like, oh, I can't even imagine like what this would look like. So anyway, I'm very excited to have you on and have you tell your story. So let's start back. You grew up in London.
Yes.
So how long? So you said you were 7 years old when you came to the US.
Yeah. So I was born in London, and my parents are both from London or the surrounding area of London. And I think my parents, there were a lot of reasons why we moved, but a big reason, they loved the lifestyle here in Los Angeles and they loved the weather.
Totally.
And
oh my gosh.
There were a lot of opportunities in the US alone, but especially in LA, and the school system is very different. So ultimately we moved, the four of us moved. I have a brother, he's a couple years younger than me.
Nice.
So yeah, we moved, and I've been here ever since I was 7, and I loved it so much I decided to stay for college.
Oh my goodness. So yeah, so you grew up, I guess, in West LA, Brentwood, you said, and then made your way down to USC. So when, I guess, growing up, I know you went through several different health situations. I want to kind of start with that, like the beginning of like your health journey, because I'm sure that has influenced, you know, what path you are pursuing now in your career. So you were diagnosed with something called mast cell activation syndrome.
Correct.
Can you describe to our audience like what that is first and foremost?
So mast cell activation syndrome is a condition that sort of starts in your immune system. So the mast cells are a type of white blood cell. Okay. And they are most commonly known for being in charge of allergic reactions. So I'm sure you've probably heard of histamine.
Yes.
That's the main mediator.
Yeah.
But mast cells release hundreds of different mediators, and so histamine is just one of them.
Gotcha.
So if you imagine,
wow. See, I'm being educated along with everybody else.
So if you imagine the mast cell contains these little sacs, if you will, of the mediators. And what happens in an allergic reaction is that the allergen, whatever it is, binds to the mast cell, and it causes the mast cell to degranulate. And that's essentially when the mast cell releases the mediators. And those mediators come out, histamine being one of them. Okay. And that causes a variety of different symptoms, and that's the symptoms that happen in an allergic reaction.
Gotcha.
And because of that, and because mast cells are virtually everywhere in your body, the symptoms of mast cell activation syndrome and allergies in general can affect pretty much every system of the body. Right. So in MCAS, or mast cell activation syndrome, in MCAS,
what's the abbreviation?
MCAS, like MCAS.
Okay, gotcha.
So in MCAS, essentially what happens is that the mast cells are not only inappropriately being triggered by things that would typically be harmless, but they're also releasing too many of the mediators. So they're releasing too many of the mediators too often.
Gotcha. Which, because I know all we hear as like me, whenever I have allergies, I'll go take an antihistamine and that's it. So you're saying there's hundreds of other besides that besides could affect your body.
Histamine. Yeah. So there are lots of different medications, antihistamines, other mast cell stabilizers that help with preventing different types of mediators from being released.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing about MCAS is that it's so different for everybody that has it, which is why it's so hard to diagnose. And there's also complications with testing and things like that.
Yeah.
And it's one of those conditions that is not as rare as people think, but it's just so hard to diagnose, and it's so complex that it makes it very challenging to diagnose, which is why I'd never heard of it before I'd started that diagnostic process.
Okay. So I know whenever you're going through getting the process of getting diagnosed with something, like what was that first, I guess, reaction that you had that made, you know, I'm sure you go to the hospital or something that was like, oh, something's not right in my body.
So it's interesting because for me, I've actually had symptoms of MCAS since the day I was born, which isn't the case for everybody.
Okay.
But back then we didn't know what it was, right? Like basically my whole life until I was 12, I had these small little health issues, but nobody really thought anything of it. So I was just labeled as being sensitive. I had a sensitive stomach. I had sensitive skin.
Yeah.
You know, I got ear infections a lot. I got sick a lot. I was always tired. But because of that and because there was no label for it, it never really got recognized. Yeah. And so, you know, as much as I can talk about it and say I've had MCAS since the day I was born, and it's very evident, and my doctor noticed that, back then, that wasn't even something that crossed our mind. We never thought that there could be just like a diagnosis. We just thought, oh, she just has like, it's like coincidence. Coincidence having all these issues. Like I said, when I was 12, it started getting a lot worse. So I started having a lot of gastrointestinal symptoms. So I was always bloated. I always had a stomachache, always a headache, nauseous. Basically anytime I ate. So obviously the first thing that people say is you probably have an intolerance, or at that time it was very much everybody was talking about like gut microbiome and all of that. So that was what it got labeled as. I had all these food sensitivities because I wasn't having anaphylaxis. They just labeled it as a sensitivity, which now an intolerance / sensitivity, the difference between an intolerance and an allergy is that an allergy is your immune system reacting, and an intolerance is like your GI system basically not being able to digest it, or not being able to digest it properly. And so even though I don't have anaphylaxis, that still means that it can be an allergy because it's my immune system reacting,
because it's not processing how it should be. Like your body isn't reacting how it should be.
Well, it's my immune system reacting, not
like a swollen throat or like your eyes itching,
not
or
not a digestive issue. So because my digestive system, everything's fine with it. It's that my immune system's reacting. So anyways, getting back to, you know, I started eliminating certain foods from my diet. First it was the basics like gluten, dairy, rice, stuff like that, and I felt better. But then a couple months in, I would suddenly start reacting to stuff again. So I'd have to cut more out of my diet.
Oh wow. And so that you started cutting things out slowly. I mean, as like my brother, again, he grew up with allergies. My sister, same with her. She's allergic to a bunch of foods, and she would start cutting things out. And then, so you're saying you cut a bunch out and then you'd feel a little bit better. Yeah.
And it wasn't black and white because like I said, it wasn't anaphylaxis. So sometimes it would take me weeks to figure out if I was or wasn't reacting to something. So oftentimes the reaction wasn't immediate. It was, you know, a few days later, things like that. And eventually I got to the point where I was eating like less than 20 foods.
Oh my goodness.
And it became normal.
That's mine. As somebody who's a foodie and like loves to eat food, my family, we love to eat food. George, my boyfriend, like, it's like, oh, let's go on a date. Okay, let's go eat food. You know,
everything socially is food.
And which I don't know if that's normal. I feel like the US is like very big on food and like eating and like making it kind of glamorous, even when it's like not healthy food. It's like, oh, let's do all the mukbangs and all the crazy stuff. But how old were you throughout the process of, I guess, like eliminating food?
So things started when I was around 12 or 13.
Okay.
And I mean, it's been the past basically 10 years, but I was in middle school at the time. And obviously that was even harder because everything's social. I was at school. I couldn't find food. And that's when I started developing a lot of the like issues and anxiety around it.
Right. Yeah. Because I can imagine, especially when you're young and like, I feel like you have a lot of when I, at least speaking for myself, when I was young, it wasn't about like, I didn't really know much about health and like eating healthy. It was just like, I'm going to eat whatever my friends eat and like whatever the school lunch offers. And like, I know just from my brother's perspective, like going to lunch and having to bring a lunch, like he would get questioned, especially at a young age, because they don't understand like hey, I can't eat these. A lot of times at that age, like maybe middle school, you start understanding a little more. But in elementary school, it's like, I can't eat this. And kids don't fully understand why you're different. And it's like putting a label on, I'm sure you as a kid growing up, it's like, oh, she's the sensitive one or can't eat this. Yeah. Like, and processing that, I'm sure at a young age, you felt maybe a little excluded. I don't know. I'm speaking for like my experience with my siblings, but I guess how was that process for you? I guess being in middle school.
Yeah. I mean, I was already kind of bullied by people. Like I couldn't find my friend group at the school I was at. And so that made it even harder. Yeah. Because I felt like, you know, when I would go out with friends, it was typically we were going out to eat. So I would have to plan my meal eat before. And I always felt like I was slightly excluded from the plans. Yeah. But even just the fact that I would have to prepare so much more. Right. I started developing anxiety around, for example, I would come to school. Sometimes I would get hungry in the afternoon and I hadn't brought more food. Yeah. And there was no food I could find. The school lunch, I couldn't eat that. In the school little student store that they had where you could buy snacks, there was nothing I can eat. And so I think that's where my anxiety started to get worse, because I was essentially, I often started falling into this habit where I felt like I needed to, as if I was like a bear going into hibernation, right? Like I needed to eat a lot of food before I left the house just in case. It's like, just in case I can't find food. When's the next time I'm going to be able to find food? And that was always something that was really on my mind. Yeah. And also at the time, like you said, I got a lot of questions. Yeah. And I think the hardest part about the questions, I've always been super open. Yeah. So it wasn't that I didn't want to answer the questions, but it was that I was already struggling internally every second of every day, being like, what is happening? Why is this happening to me? And now I was not only having to battle that internally in my mind, but I was also being asked by other people. And it frustrated me so much not being able to answer their questions. Right. Because all I wanted to do was be like, yes, I can explain it. Yeah. But I couldn't. And they, you know, they probably just accepted that, oh, she's not really sure. Yeah. But for me, that made it even worse, because I was like, even more of a reason why I need to know. Yeah, definitely. Like for me, I can go out of the house and not think, oh, when am I going to be able to eat next? Or like, is there going to be something I can eat there? Like for you, I'm sure in every situation, like food is like the top of like your thought, because it's like, I'm going to an event or I'm going to school or wherever you're going. It's like, you do have to take that extra step and like actually plan out your food and like make sure you're packing enough. And I feel like that's like a mental load in itself, having to constantly be thinking of that. Like, I'm like, oh my goodness, that's just like a different way of living, obviously, but like you have to because of, you know, your diagnosis and everything. But yeah, just like the extra, I could see how that would bring a lot of anxiety. Like, you don't know how long you're going to be gone, and you have to pack enough, or you have to research what's around the area in case you need to get a snack or something as well. That's where I think like it took so long for me to realize I had anxiety, because the anxiety at first actually just felt so safe, because it was like a protective mechanism. And I think I still even fall into that now, which is that, you know, I obviously don't want to have anxiety because there are negatives and it causes stress in your body. Yeah. But at the same time, the anxiety feels safe. Yeah. Because a lot of times the way that my anxiety manifests, I mean, it starts as anxiety and it's manifested as OCD in many different ways throughout my life. Yeah. But also in this need for routine. So especially having MCAS, there's basically, it's not only foods that you can have reactions to. I have reacted to temperature changes, pressure changes, like when you go on the plane before we even take off, the cabin door closes and they adjust the pressure. I react to that. Oh my goodness. I yesterday found out I react to red light. I've been trying to do red light therapy, and every time I did it, I was having a reaction. And really? That's crazy. And it's crazy because there's been research recently saying that red light therapy is helpful for people with MCAS, but just like everything, something that's helpful for one person with MCAS could trigger another. And that's why it's so hard. I'm sure it's so confusing, and I'm sure like you'll probably continue this life. Like you're only 22. I'm sure you have many more years of figuring out things that don't sit well with your body. Is there any anxiety around that because of I guess the unknown? So it is the unknown, and that's like what I was sort of going to with the routine, which is that things can change. Things have changed. I used to be able to eat everything, and now I can only eat 14 foods, and at the least about a year ago it was only 9. And so for example, this is probably the best way to explain it is this, you know, when I travel, I bring my own food for the journey going on the plane. So I was going to Indianapolis for a work trip this summer, and I made some turkey and I put it in a container. It's the same turkey I eat every single day. So I'm like, it's fine. Like, it's my safe food. I can bring it. So I bring it on the plane. I get there. It's still cold because I put it with ice packs. It was a short flight. Put it in the fridge at the hotel. Yeah. And that night I have some for dinner. I go to bed. I have the worst stomach ache. I wake up. I go work out. Same as I do every single day. I felt so nauseous. All day my stomach hurt. And then before we were going to dinner at a restaurant, I had some more of it. And it's still good because I only cooked it less than 36 hours ago. Right. It should last at least 48 hours. Yeah. Then it was even worse. And that's when I realized that I was reacting to the turkey. And you know what it was? Which I had never had this problem before, but it's a known thing. So when you cook food and it gets stored, something about the conditions of food being stored, which is also why I can't eat dried food, but I can eat like fresh food. Gotcha. It actually increases the histamines. Really? So I was reacting to the preparation of my safe food. So things like that. Like I thought that was safe for me and then it wasn't, but I'd done that before and it was fine. So it is really... it causes a lot of anxiety and it's very easy to spiral in that way. And that's why I like my routine so much, because in my mind, if I do the same thing I did yesterday, I didn't react yesterday, I won't react today. Yeah. Because one of the most frustrating things is when I have a reaction and I don't know what it is. Yeah. When I know what it is, it puts me at peace of mind. But
yeah, well, I mean, I feel like there's probably multiple things that go into not knowing what caused a reaction. Like obviously like the thought of like, oh my goodness, I'm reacting, you know, what could this be? But also like you're physically feeling ill, you know, like you said you get nauseous, your stomach hurts. Like I'm like that on top of like the mental of, okay, now I got to figure this out because otherwise I'm not going to feel well, you know, if I keep eating something that's going to affect my body. Yeah. Gosh, that's crazy. I didn't know. Now you can't eat dry food.
So I can't eat like dried fruit, but I can eat the fresh version of the fruit.
Gotcha. Oh my goodness. What about like beef jerky? Can't eat that. Oh my goodness.
Well, I can't eat beef, but like for example, turkey. I can have turkey. Well, no, but I can have turkey, but I can't have turkey jerky because it's dried.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. So obviously, you know, you're continuously learning the things that you can't eat. When you first started, you know, testing things, how long, I guess, from the period of like being able to eat a bunch of food to then cutting out to 14 foods now? Yeah. Like how long was that process of, I guess, like trial and error?
I mean, I guess it still went on until last year when I started reintroducing foods, but it wasn't really trial and error most of the time because it wasn't that the whole time I could only eat those 9 foods. Right. Like I said, I would be fine and then suddenly I develop more symptoms. And so that is a huge characteristic of MCAS, which is why we know I've had it since the day I was born, but we didn't figure it out until I was 12. Something about MCAS is that for any stressful event, and stress can be characterized psychologically or physically, that can cause a flare-up. So even that could even be getting sick. Getting sick puts your immune system under stress. Yeah. Could be really anything. Right. So that stress can cause a flare-up, and that flare-up can sometimes be permanent. So that's also another thing too, is like when I'm having those symptoms and when I'm having a reaction, I don't know how long it will last. I don't know how it will progress. I don't know if it will get worse. Like sometimes I'm having this feeling of like difficulty breathing. Like, will that get worse? Yeah. Will, like the example of when I traveled and ate the turkey, that lasted almost 3 weeks, those symptoms. Oh my goodness. So you never know. But anyways, so the baseline sort of gets worse. Yeah. So, you know, when the baseline had gotten worse when I was younger, I obviously it wasn't enough that it made it so severe that we could really tell. Yeah. But when I was 12, that it started getting worse. And so when sometimes I can pinpoint the exact thing. Like I can pinpoint a very specific time where I went on this camping trip that was very stressful and it flared up. The last food, so when I went from 10 to 9 foods, that food, I lost it immediately after I had this very stressful event with a roommate that I was living with. So sometimes I really can pinpoint exactly when, like, you know, this is when it happened and this is why, but sometimes it just happens.
Oh my goodness. I know we talked about before the podcast, we kind of talked about like the being diagnosed. You've worked in healthcare, right? So you know kind of how you know the both ends.
So I've worked in healthcare for about 6 years, and I've worked with anywhere from small startups to big healthcare systems, and I've really been involved in the industry. Mostly, you know, the work I've done is more around marketing and branding and that kind of thing. Right. But I've had experience really seeing like how the industry works. And I've
Right.
learned a lot about that because I am interested in that, and that's part of my passion.
Yeah.
And just like medicine and biology in general.
Right.
And so I think I had my personal journey at the very beginning.
Yeah.
I fell into the trap of the idea that healthcare is sort of very paternalistic. So the idea that in society we are sort of trained to see doctors like a parent. We listen to them.
Yep.
They know everything.
Yeah.
But in reality, we know ourselves best.
Yeah.
And I used to fall into that trap where, you know, I'd wait weeks to see some doctors.
Yeah.
And I'd count down the days, be like, sort of in my mind having the mindset that the day I saw the doctor was when my problem would be fixed.
Yeah.
And then I would leave the appointments very disappointed.
Yeah.
And I realized that I needed to change that. And my mom helped me see that, you know, I can't expect that they're going to fix it immediately.
Yeah.
And at some point I decided to take control myself. And there's a lot more that happened between that. But
Yeah.
I decided that I needed to take control because I know my body best.
Yeah.
And I need to trust myself and I need to trust my intuition. And I've always felt like I have a really strong intuition that I can trust. Yeah, when it came time to get a diagnosis, I knew that I needed to take control no matter how many doctors told me that there was nothing wrong or that I was making it up, because I had that as well. And on the sort of industry side, I would call myself a healthcare optimist.
Yeah.
I just see the good that
Yeah.
that healthcare is trying to help people.
Yeah, definitely.
I definitely have had some experiences with doctors that I think, you know, I guess you can never know somebody's true intention, but I felt like they could have done something different.
Yeah.
Like they truly didn't do what they should do.
Yeah.
But I can also acknowledge that the healthcare system is not built for doctors to diagnose people, especially with complex conditions.
Yeah.
You know, the easy things like the common cold and that kind of thing, fine. But the system is not built to see somebody as a whole person, to see all the different things that are happening and to connect them.
Yeah.
And fortunately, that's something I was able to take on myself. I've always been really good at seeing patterns, problem solver. So I essentially saw this pattern between all the different issues I had.
Yeah.
I went to my doctor and I said, I think I found an answer that could explain everything.
Yeah.
Because I just found this pattern.
Right.
And I told her, and she goes, Jenna, don't kid yourself. You'll never find an answer that explains everything.
Yeah.
And that was really hard to hear because I felt like I'm taking this initiative and she's only just shutting me down. And anyways, eventually I did get diagnosed, and I had some amazing doctors that helped me see that there are people that can help and
definitely
helped me figure out how to navigate the healthcare system.
Yeah.
And one huge thing I've learned is that, like I said, it's up to you. Like, this is my body, this is my life, this is something I have to experience every single day.
You have to self-advocate for yourself.
And the doctor, to them, like, not to be harsh, but to them, I'm just another person in their day.
Yeah.
Like, I leave their office and they get to forget about it, but I don't get to forget about it. This is my life.
Yeah.
And so I need to tell them that. I need to tell them not only how the symptoms affect my life, but I need to lay it out to them as best as I can, as clear as I can.
Yeah.
Because I don't think the healthcare system is set up to... You know, doctors are trained essentially like an algorithm. They're trained this symptom, this symptom, this symptom equals this diagnosis. But we don't experience life as symptoms.
Yeah.
We experience it as life. And that's why I think it's so hard for people with chronic conditions to go to the doctor, because they talk about their life experience and how their life has been affected. But doctors can't really pass that information.
Right.
And that's why I started tracking my symptoms on a spreadsheet to show them, like, actually showing them how the symptoms affect my life. And there are so many different things I've learned, but you just, in the end, it's all about you taking ownership and taking control.
Yeah. One thing I learned from Dr. Gold was, you know, that doctors are trained to not kind of almost not have empathy because it's like kind of like a protection, like, because they can't cry over every patient that's having problems, or really, like, you know, so they take themselves out of that as a protection mechanism, which I thought was interesting, because I'm like, I've had doctors that are really like, I feel like they're really hearing me, and then I have doctors, you know, kind of like what you said, it's like a checklist, and I'm like, I don't think she's hearing me or doesn't care about me, but in reality, like, that's how they're trained, like, through like medical school is like very like, you don't want to have emotion. And that's something I learned from her, is that like they really like shame any doctors who like are empathetic or do have emotions, because it's just their job. But again, like, as human beings who are like feeling the symptoms day to day, I mean, I'm sure like it's exhausting to hear like nothing's wrong with you or you're fine or whatever. Like, did you ever feel crazy throughout the diagnosis process, because you're feeling these things, you're talking to different doctors, you know, and luckily at the end of the day you were diagnosed, but throughout that process, like, I would feel like a little, like, I'm like, am I crazy? Like, is it all in my head? Did you ever have thoughts like that?
Oh, 100%, especially because, like I mentioned earlier, I couldn't explain what was going on. I didn't have a name. And so the diagnosis for me changed my life so much, because it allowed me to, when I was having these experiences, these complex experiences, instead of trying to spiral in my head, trying to figure out what is this, what is, like, I'm having this symptom, what is going on? Yeah. I could just go, no. It's MCAS. Yeah. Like, it's MCAS. Oh, this is happening. It's MCAS. Like, this complex thing happened yesterday. It's MCAS. Like, it really just helped put all of that anxiety at peace. And also when people ask what's going on, why is this the case? Like, why do you have this? Oh, it doesn't make sense. Even when doctors don't believe me, I just say, I have MCAS. Some doctors don't even believe in MCAS. But in the end, I go, that doesn't actually faze me anymore, because I say, well, you know, I have this diagnosis called MCAS. There's actually a diagnostic code, there's diagnostic criteria, and I actually happen to meet all that diagnostic criteria. If you don't want to believe that, it's actually not my problem, because in the end, a diagnosis, right, it basically just says I have all these symptoms and it's just guiding me on what treatment I should do. I have these symptoms, the treatment works, that's all that really matters in the end.
Yeah, definitely. I know that whenever, you know, I've been to the doctor, they're like, track your symptoms. Now, for somebody that's never really done that, or like, I don't know how to do that. So because you kind of took it upon yourself to advocate for yourself and, you know, track your patterns and your symptoms and everything, what advice would you give to somebody that is wanting to just track how they're feeling? Like, is there a certain like structure that you go about it, or anything you can like give advice on that area?
I think in the end, it's like, find what works for you. I started with the spreadsheet because that's what my doctor told me to do. And my purpose was particularly for tracking what medications were working and what wasn't. But there are amazing apps. One of them that I've actually worked with, their team is amazing. Guava Health. It's specifically meant for people with chronic conditions to help them track their symptoms. Guava Health.
Guava Health. I said health.
Yeah.
Guava Health.
Yeah, gotcha. But there are just so many different ways you can do it, and that's more of like the complex way to do it. A spreadsheet's super simple. That's what I've loved to do. I think it's just finding what works for you and not listening to like what other people are telling you to do, because and for me, I've always felt too, despite, you know, I've tracked my symptoms, and, you know, you can look at the data and say this medication worked, this didn't. But in the end, I tried not to stress too much about, well, did this one work better than this one? Well, this one, I ranked my symptom at this number versus this. It's all subjective. In the end, I just try and like really ask myself, like, which medication is it? Like, that's why I never try new medications unless I feel that it's right. Sometimes I've gotten a prescription, I've asked my doctor to prescribe it, I've gone to the pharmacy, I've picked it up, and I've never taken it. And then you never used it. Because it just didn't feel right.
And it's that intuition that you're following. Wow. I wish I had that strong of an intuition. I feel like I do, but maybe not as much with health, because I'm like, I don't know. But you being like educated and kind of working in that space, I'm sure has helped a lot. Now, I know that you also said you have POTS. Oh my goodness. So I know POTS has to do with your heart, right?
Yeah, postural orthostatic tachycardia.
It's like when you stand up and sit down.
Yeah, so it's so postural essentially means like the position that you're in. And tachycardia is obviously like your heart rate speeding up, but it's a form of dysautonomia. So dysautonomia would be the umbrella term for your autonomic nervous system. So things like breathing, the things that you do without controlling. Sort of dysfunction of that. So I have general dysautonomia, and it's actually, there's been studies done that show that it sort of is caused by MCAS. For people that have MCAS, it's a common comorbidity. So for me, dysautonomia has manifested as POTS, but also as my blood oxygen level dysregulating.
Oh my goodness. So many things. It's crazy how one thing can like just like lead to another, and how like I have a friend who has POTS, and she was just diagnosed with POTS, but I know POTS can be a symptom of other, you know, diagnoses and different illnesses and stuff. So it's just interesting to hear and how everything kind of intertwines together. So you decided you go to USC, right? What, and tell everybody what you are majoring in, because
it's a long one.
It's a long one.
So my major is called Arts, Technology, and the Business of Innovation. It's sort of like this is what I wanted. I wanted business without the math, and it's basically that. It's business without the math, but sub in the design. So we study design.
What I would do.
We study design, entrepreneurship, business, and technology and communication.
Yeah.
So it's this interdisciplinary program where we learn to do design, we learn to code, we learn to build a business.
Nice.
And it's all very project based, and that's I'm just a very creative person at heart, and it's just the perfect program for me, and I've loved every minute of it.
Did you use creative outlets for coping mechanisms for how you felt with your allergies and everything?
I think it's hard because, like I said, until I was like 15, I didn't think I had health issues.
Right.
I was like, everything's fine.
You're like, good. Yeah.
Even though I was like seriously struggling, having all these symptoms, couldn't eat any foods.
Yeah.
But I wanted to be a fashion designer when I was younger. That was my passion. I loved sewing. Yeah. And then it evolved into graphic design.
Nice.
Then it evolved into logo making and UI, UX design. And I've always been very entrepreneurial.
Yeah.
And it sort of naturally developed.
Yeah.
I also was super interested in science. Yeah. But I put that aside because I was like, well, I don't want to be a doctor. Right. So in high school, when I figured out, I got an internship at a hospital and I got to work with a bunch of healthcare companies and essentially like an innovation incubator. And I was like, wait, I can work in healthcare and not be a doctor? Yeah. And a lot of people actually think that I got into healthcare because of my health issues, but it was the opposite, because at that time I didn't have a diagnosis.
That's what I would have guessed.
Yeah, I didn't have a diagnosis. I just loved medicine. I thought it was so fascinating, biology and everything. And that's when I realized that I could actually combine all my passions. And then, you know, now doing content creation as well and sort of finding my own personal health journey as a way of also work. Yeah. I sort of work on both sides of healthcare. I work on that patient side, consumer side of like my personal health journey, but I also work on the healthcare system. And I think one of the super powerful things about that is like what we were talking about. I think that there are a lot of issues around the healthcare system of fundamentally how the healthcare system is built doesn't really serve doctors to serve patients in the best way possible. But that's not something that we can just immediately change. And so I love that I get to work on that and help healthcare companies, especially as healthcare is becoming more consumer driven, and really help that. But I also get to share my own experience because I've been able to experience both and leverage that to have these insights that have really helped me and been instrumental in my health journey and getting a diagnosis and getting to where I am now. And I actually get to share that with the community that I've built online. So many of them are experiencing the same things I have, but maybe don't have that insight from having worked in the system. Yeah,
I mean, I came across your page and I was like immediately like, oh, this is a safe space. And, you know, I think healthcare can feel scary, but like seeing the content that you create, that was like the first, I was like, oh, I'm not alone in whatever I'm going through. Like, you're using your creative outlet. It's interesting because you have your healthcare, you have the design part or the creative part, and then you have your personal story. And I feel like you've intertwined all of those like perfectly together. So I'm just excited to see where you take everything, because I think it's like an amazing, like a little triangle of like the three different things that you're passionate about. And like, all of those things are going to help people so much. You know, obviously healthcare, it's like driven towards helping people, and like your personal story, I'm sure, is going to help so many people. And then like the creative is like how to get that out there in the world more, you know, to again help people. So I think that's like super beautiful. With your Instagram and your TikTok, have you had people kind of reach out to you going through similar things?
So many, surprisingly. Like, I really could have never expected that. I could have never expected like gaining a following and building that community. I didn't really think of that at the beginning. I sort of just started for fun, creating content. Like, that's why I feel like I identify as a content creator, not an influencer, because I didn't start to like influence people. I started to create content because, like I said, like I'm a really creative person. And then when I realized I could also connect with people, I was like, wait, there are so many people that have MCAS and I've never met any in person. Obviously now I have, but at that time I hadn't. And there are so many people who are watching my videos, and I definitely have a positive outlook on life, and my videos sort of revolve around that. It's usually sort of more fun, entertaining content. I'm like trying different recipes, trying out random weird things.
I love it.
So it is sort of taking this situation that I happen to have that some people might see as a negative and turning it into a positive and being like, how can I just make this fun? How can I enjoy my life? I still enjoy my food. I love my food. Yeah. Some people are like, I would hate my food. I would never want to eat, but I just enjoy my food. Like I really don't think that much into it. It's become so normal part of my life now. So to me, I'm literally just sharing my everyday life. But obviously to other people from the outside, it's something that you wouldn't comprehend just immediately.
Yeah. What made you start posting like on TikTok? Just your personal journey, and not for brands.
So I was taking a class at school, and it was a filmmaking class, and we had to make a video showing how we do something, an instructional video. So my group decided to do a video on how I make my dinner every day. And originally it just had music in the background, and my professor was like, well, why don't you tell us why you can only eat this? And I was like, nobody cares about that. Nobody wants to know. He was like, no, I think they would. So I filmed a voiceover and I explained about how I have MCAS and what that really means. And people watched it in class and everyone was so intrigued. And that's when I realized people are interested, even people that don't have MCAS. People are just,
me, I'm interested.
Yeah, people are just curious. What? And then somebody made a comment in passing. It was just supposed to be funny. Like, what if you posted that on TikTok? I'm sure it would like go viral. Yeah. And that made me think, maybe I could start creating some content. So I did and posted some different videos. And I think it was honestly like less than 3 weeks in, my first video that I posted went viral. And I basically gained 10,000 followers overnight, which originally my long-term 2-year goal was to get to the 10,000 follower point, because everybody talks about like the 10K.
You want the 10K. Yes.
And I basically got that in like 3 weeks, and I was just shocked. And I was shocked at the positive response. There was obviously people that were negative, and I've learned a lot of lessons, and I've evolved what kind of content I create, how I create the content, making sure that I'm really sharing accurate information and not misleading people in any way, or sharing something out of context that somebody could take as advice that's not meant to be advice. And that is something I care a lot about, just with my background in healthcare. And I just love that I get to use it in that way.
No, that's so cool. I can definitely feel that. I mean, again, like I came across you, I was like, oh, this girl is like, I loved your videos. Like they're very like soothing, like feeling. I was like, and I don't have like food allergies. So I'm like sitting there watching these videos. I was like, this girl only can eat this many ingredients. And I'm like sitting there watching you create these meals and like making the best out of your situation. And I think that's why like it's so inspiring to see, because I'm like, for me, I always like say like it could always be worse, and for me, like with food, I'm like, oh, you're making it work and you're turning it into like your purpose and like your passion, and you're able to help other people and grow this community, which I think is going to go far beyond just people who have MCAS. I think it's going to go, because again, I'm like literally, I follow you. I'm like, I literally am like one of those people that enjoy listening to your story and everything that you have to talk about. And I don't have any allergies, Yeah. So I think you're using your platform like perfectly. And I love how like even hearing you talk about it, I can hear like the passion behind it and how you actually genuinely want to help people. So that's where I want to kind of segment to, I guess you are building a company. I want you to talk a bit about that and like where that stemmed from, obviously your past, but like talk more in depth about that and what's to come.
So sort of a little background to some of that is that I feel like as an anxious person, and I think a lot of people are like, especially on social media as well, sometimes with some of the negatives that come with it, it can be hard to be like, am I on the right path? Am I doing the right thing? And especially with like my health issues, that's been a thing that's gone through my head a lot. And I think what I've learned is that I just need to do what's working at the time and follow what's working, follow what's going well, follow the opportunities that are there. And I've been very fortunate to be in a position where I can do that, and I can just like follow my passions and really try what I want to do. Right. And so when I started doing social media and it started becoming something where I was making an income and I could sort of support myself on that, I followed that even more. And especially in those moments where I've been like, what if I didn't have these conditions? Like, what would my life be like that? Sometimes I just think of it as like, I just believe that all these things happen and I can choose to take that in whatever way I want. And so I've taken that in a way of, using that to connect with people online and build that community and develop my skills for the other things that I'm doing, because I've worked with healthcare companies doing branding and marketing, and that is part of my passion. And now I'm doing that for myself on my own platform and then getting to partner with brands that actually want my expertise because they're actually trying to do what I'm doing
Yeah.
and what I've done for companies. So it's sort of this like paradox. It's very interesting. But my dad's an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And so I've watched that my whole life. And
Yeah.
I think that's where I get my entrepreneurial tendencies from.
Right.
And he, with his business partner from his other business, he decided that he wanted to start a health app because he went through his own like weight loss fitness journey.
Nice.
And he knows that I have like very strong opinions on health and like what it means to be healthy and have a healthy lifestyle, because I think that the word healthy is subjective. It means something different for everybody.
Yeah.
And he knows that I have expertise in healthcare and in health and also in marketing and branding.
Right.
And so when he had this idea to start this company, he brought me on immediately because he was like, we need your expertise. Yeah. So it's developed since then. The idea has definitely morphed into something that I think sort of encapsulates our personal beliefs about health, which is that, you know, so many of these different challenges, for example, like take the 75 hard.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
I actually did it.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
And I stopped about 50 days in because I realized it was causing so much stress on my body and I was basically waiting for it to be over. Yeah. And like, what's going to happen when it's over? The whole point is that you're doing this challenge. Yes, you may have a goal. You may want to lose some weight, right? Or build muscle, whatever it is. But afterwards, you want to have a healthy life. And so our app was born out of the mission that we want to help people achieve their immediate health goals because we know that that's important and we know that's what drives people in the end. Like that's what people are buying into. Right. They want to build muscle. They want to lose weight. They want to have more energy. They want to sleep better, whatever it is. Yeah. But we also know that long-term health is so important.
Oh yeah, totally.
So our app is built on the foundation that we're going to help you build habits and make small changes on the lifestyle level. So we track everything from fitness, exercise, sleep, hydration, nutrition, mindfulness, and more. And we help you create realistic goals. So one of the ways we do that is that we track goals on a weekly basis rather than daily basis. So some people work a 9 to 5 and maybe they have kids that they have to go home to and they just frankly don't have time to work out during the week. Yeah. But they still want to have a workout goal. So you could set your goal as to work out twice a week. So that would be your weekend days. Right. And you keep your streak by doing it twice a week. So your goal is weekly, not daily.
Instead of this like unattainable or unrealistic goal.
Exactly.
You know, like with your Apple Watch, it's like,
I have to reach it every single day.
Every day. And I'm a perfectionist and I'm OCD. So like if I don't check off, like I'm somebody that like, if I don't check off all my boxes, I'm like, I don't want to check off any, like I'm like very all or nothing. Like everything has to be perfect or I'm not doing it. So having that mindset, like literally I would wear my Apple Watch. I've worn it on and off for the past several years. And I find myself, I'm like, oh, I'm going to get back on my, you know, on my shit. I'm going to get my Apple Watch and check off all the boxes. And then I realize when it's on, I'm like, I feel like this is causing a lot of stress because I'm like, because of some box I'm not checking off or some ring I'm not closing. So
me with my Oura Ring and Apple Watch.
But like, it's difficult for somebody like me that's like, definitely like, I want to achieve all the goals that I've written down. And sometimes I don't take into, I'm like, oh, I'm sick today. That's not possible. And then I ruin my streak.
Exactly. So it's meant to really help people find balance. And it's also very customizable. So if you only want to look at nutrition and fitness, you can do that. If you only want to look at sleep and nutrition, you can do that. We want it to be easy to use. We want it to be customizable. And I'm personally just really excited to use it for the reason you said. I've gotten so trapped in this idea that I need to do things every single day. And I just want something that I can use to track because for me, tracking is, and it helps me. It gives that discipline that helps me be motivated. Right. But I want it to be more balanced. I want it to be more realistic. I don't want to have to stress over it because I personally believe, and this has gone a lot into developing the app, is that your health shouldn't be another thing that you feel like you have to fit into your lifestyle every single day. It's another thing I have to think about. Yeah. It should just be part of your daily life. And yes, at the beginning, if you don't have a healthy lifestyle tool, it might take time to implement those small habits, but they can be really, really small things.
Yeah, definitely. I know like with habits, it's like, I feel like, you know, with the beginning of the year coming up, people are like, oh, I want to get to the gym and work out every day. And then blah, blah, blah. And then it's like, then they're burnt out within the first week. And it's like, because it's unrealistic and it like things have to grow on each other. And like, I think it's important, like you said, like choosing 1 or 2 habits, you know, that, okay, I'm just going to stick to this and then building upon that. And I think if it's your app would be customizable, you can start small and increase as, you know, as it's become easier, or as you want to grow and increase your workouts.
Also, it's called Livio. I didn't mention that.
Livio. So when do you have a launch date set, or is it coming
not 100%, but we will launch in time for the new year.
Really?
So we'll have a beta version within the next few weeks, and then we'll iterate on the beta version before the new year starts, and hopefully by the new year we'll, it'll be ready to fully go.
Oh my goodness. Do you have an Instagram for it or anything yet, or you're gonna get that process?
Yeah. So on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube, it's Livio Health app.
Okay. Yeah, just because like I want to follow, and like I'm sure you'll post when it's launching. I'm sure you'll post probably when it's launching.
I'm going to be like the face of the social media.
Yes, exactly. Now, last little thing, like before we kind of wrap up, I want to talk about like, with social media, we're posting and we're showing up, and you are super positive on social media, even given your situation. What do bad days look like, I guess, mentally for like, especially on social media, people are crazy and like sometimes they'll comment negative things. Do you ever get in your head about those situations, or like, is there a mental toll that has taken, I guess, from you with posting on social media and being in that world now?
I honestly think I don't really get fazed by the negative comments that I get from followers, mostly because I'm so secure in the things that I post about. Like, I'm secure in my diagnosis. So when somebody tells me that it's like fake, well, I'm making it up. I'm like, you're sure.
Like, no. Yeah.
Sure. Right? I think what is hard though is there's so many vanity metrics on social media, and it can be hard to get into that mindset of comparison. And I think that's just something that is very difficult, and it can be stressful, and it can make you want to do things based on strategy. And I really do just try and balance it, because I know in the end, like, I do really want to connect with people, and I want to connect with my community, and I want to make people feel good, and I want to do things that help them. And I try to stay grounded in that too by meeting people. I met somebody that I'm connected with on social media last week when I was in Boston, and like, here I am talking to you, and really being able to connect with people that are also on social media that sort of understand that, and connecting in real life, and realizing that there's so much more than just what's online and just the numbers.
Yeah, absolutely. One other thing is, if you could give, let's say somebody's going through a diagnosis process and they're feeling overwhelmed or like anxious about the whole thing, is there any advice you would give them?
I would say to like trust yourself and take control in whatever way that means for you. I know, especially like for people with anxiety, sometimes that lack of control causes a lot of anxiety. And so in those moments where, like I said, everything's so unpredictable having MCAS. So in those moments where I feel like I don't have any control, taking control. And for me, like I said, I'm very passionate about health and wellness in general. And so for me, taking control in those really hard times has been things like going for a walk every morning, walking a mile, just like wake up, go walk a mile. Having my routine, like meditating before bed, reading before bed, like not using my phone, those things that I can do every single day, I can give myself the control. I don't need to be like, why isn't my body letting me control it? No, I can make that control. I can give myself exactly what my brain needs. My brain wants a sense of control. I can give that to myself. And that has been so amazing, because in the moments when my health has been at the worst place it's ever been, I've felt the best about myself and my health, because I feel like I'm in control.
Yeah, no, that's really good. And I think sometimes I forget that whenever I feel out of control, just with life, life throws you curveballs all the time. It's like, I can take it and I can create control, maybe not in the area that I want at the moment, but like still having a sense of like, no, this is my life. And like, I can implement things that make me feel more in control. And just overall more sane, I think, is like having control over things, like makes me feel more relaxed, which in return is just better for the overall health. There was one other thing. So you said you can eat 14 foods right now. Can you list them off?
Yes, I'm like, let's see if we can do it. Like, it's giving game show. Okay.
Yes.
So the two proteins I can have are turkey and white fish.
Okay.
The vegetables I can have are green beans, zucchini, cucumber, and lima fruits.
Yeah.
Other fruits would be pears, grapes, raspberries, dates. Yeah. Then I can have olive oil, chia seeds. Yeah. Water lily seeds.
Oh my goodness.
And what's the last? I'm like, what's the last one?
No.
What is the last one?
That's so funny.
There's a 14th.
It's okay. I
What
put you on
even is it?
I put you on the spot. It was a
That's so
game
funny
show.
that I can't even
But
remember.
that's-
Watermelon.
Watermelon.
That's the newest, so it makes sense why
So
I
you're
kinda
adding
forgot.
things back in now.
Yeah, so
Okay.
like I said, at the lowest point it was 9, and I've been doing treatment, and
Yeah.
I will say so much of the treatment that I'm on a lot of medications, but
Yeah.
the treatment that has actually been able to allow me to introduce foods again has been very psychologically
Yeah.
based,
Wow.
calming down my nervous system, because your neurons are very closely related to the mast cells, and so if you're stressed, the neurons can fire, and that can trigger your mast cells.
Wow.
I think that's a very simplification of the science, but
Yes. So staying calm is important. Like just like staying
so
relaxed
much.
and not stressing, because
literally
the stress can
cause a reaction.
wow.
Can cause an allergic reaction.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
I would be done for if I'm like, 'cause I'm like a stress case.
Same. That's like when you said that, you said something like a few minutes ago, like how my videos were like very like calm. I was
Yes.
like soothing. I was like, I'm a very chaotic person. What are you talking about?
They are. I'm like, oh my goodness. Like she's making these meals with like 14 ingredients. That's insane. Do you have a favorite meal right now?
Favorite meal?
Do you have like a you know how like people have
Yes,
this
like
meal
ground
fixation?
turkey and air fried green beans.
Hey.
Like my fixations.
Oh
I
my
mean, all my foods are my fixations because I
Yeah.
eat the same thing every day. But yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well, that's amazing. Where can people find you on social media?
So I'm on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at Jenna X Health.
Jenna X Health, and then Livio
Health app
Yes,
is the handle for all the social media.
awesome. I'm so excited for everything that's to come. I'm going to be following your journey, and hopefully we get more people, get to know you a little bit more through this podcast, and get more people hopefully sign up for Livio when it's launched. But yeah, thank you so much for coming on. I think your story is like inspiring, and with having brothers and sisters who have had allergies, like I know it can feel exhausting probably at some times, like, and yours is on a whole other level. Like I've witnessed it, and I'm just like, oh, you're such a positive light and bring so much like positive energy. And yeah, I'm excited to watch your community continue to grow. And guys, make sure to follow her on TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, Jenna X Health. Right? That's right.
Yes.
Yeah. And yeah, thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun.
Yes. And thank you guys. Make sure to tune in every Tuesday for a new episode. Bye.